One is Enough by Flora Mwapa. Chapter 4. Once she had satisfied herself that Obiora was suffering more from shock than any severe injury, Amaka decided to leave her marital home. It was obvious that her marriage was dead, and the sooner it was buried, the better. Since she had decided to leave the house, it was better to move far away out of Onitsha altogether. But where? Who did she have outside Onitsha? Why, her sister, Ayo, of course, who had recently moved to Lagos and had been asking her to come there for a holiday. Well, Lagos it would be. Lagos was the place for business to make money and live well. In 24 hours, Amaka had packed her personal belongings into a large trunk, which she left with her mother. After a few weeks, she took one suitcase of clothes with her on the bus to Lagos. Her sister was delighted to see her. The next day, Amaka went into town to shop for some basic necessities for herself. Amaka was shopping in Kingsway Stores, Lagos, when she saw Adobe. They recognized each other at once. "Amaka, welcome to Lagos. How are you, my dear?" And they embraced once again. Adobe then took Amaka to the coffee shop. "Are you here for a holiday? Where are you staying? How is Obiora?" Adobe fired questions at Amaka as they sat down and ordered drinks. "Give me a chance, my dear. I have a long story to tell you." When Amaka finished recounting her experiences, Adobe was silent for a few minutes. Then she reflected slowly. "Ego told me a bit of what happened to you and your marriage. I cannot imagine the whole incident. Obiora was such a lovely person, so considerate and loving. How can he have changed so much?" Adobe and Obiora had been friendly in school. Obiora was very fond of Adobe and wanted to marry her, but Adobe was not keen. Obiora's mother was not keen either. It was in the company of Adobe that Obiora met Amaka and fell for her. "It's my luck," Amaka said. "When I left my marital home, my mother was upset. I was greeted with harsh words. You know my mother. Let me tell you what my mother said to me. 'You fool,' she said to me. 'You are not my daughter. I told you to leave that husband of yours years ago if he was unable to make you pregnant.' Adobe, you know how cruel she is." She went on and on. She was so merciless, so cruel that I burst into tears. But she did not stop. She went on. "I told you 4 years ago to leave him, or if you did not want to leave him, to go to other men and get pregnant. You are my daughter. We are never barren in our family, never. Even in your own imbecile father's family, there was nothing like barrenness. But you refused to take my advice. You were being a good wife. Chastity, faithfulness, my foot. You can go ahead and eat virtue. Here are your belongings sent to me in this disgraceful manner, my daughter, humiliated in this way. You are not my daughter. Did you now witness what happened when your eldest sister's husband started fooling around? I gave my daughter advice and she took it. Her husband came to me. He came all the way from Jos to beg me to forgive him. I forgave him and warned him. You had the guts to tell me in the presence of your husband not to interfere in the affairs of your home. Shit! What do you mean by interference? Why should I not have a say about the happiness of my daughter and her husband? If I did not interfere, then I was wicked. I had failed in my duty as a mother. Then your other sister came up with the superior attitude of one who went to the home of the white men. I gave her 1 or 2 home truths when her dandy husband got himself a mistress old enough to be his mother. I told her what to do. She did it. Her husband called a truce. His position was strengthened. He did not want to lose his job because of the gossip that would have ensued if he had been foolish enough to throw his wife out. Ayo is the only one among you who is like me. She took no nonsense from any man. When her husband came up with his pranks, she left him and got herself kept by a permanent secretary whose wife went to the land of the white people to read books. Foolish woman, to leave her husband for that length of time to read books. Ayo moved in. In 4 years, she had 4 children. In 4 years, her husband had sent her to school to improve. She is cleverer than all of you. She qualified as a teacher. In the 5th year, she was able to make her husband buy her a house in Surulere And that year, the wife returned without anything, and my daughter moved out gracefully with her children into her own home. In her position, what does she want from a man? I want to ask you. Now, when it is almost too late in life, you come crying to me. Shame on you. Then she began to weep. I have never seen my mother weep in that way before. When our father died, she did not weep like that. That weeping and my suffering must have changed me a good deal. I stayed with her for a while, then decided to come to Lagos to start life again. Never mind, Amaka. I am happy to see you in Lagos, said Adobe. I have always said and believe that if one makes a mistake in marriage, one should not leave with one's mistake. One should try and start again. I know you well and what you are capable of doing. Right now, in spite of everything, I still love Obiora. I thought erroneously at first that marriage involved two people. I thought the emphasis was on this unique relationship of man and woman, that children did not even matter. I was wrong. A childless marriage cannot last in the Nigeria of today. So if your wife is unable to have children by her husband, she should leave and try elsewhere. They ordered more coffee and soft drinks. Adobe, Amaka went on. I am confused. I am a motherly person. I need just one man. I am not like my sister. But now the idea of a husband scares me. I have come to Lagos to start afresh. I did contract work at Onitsha. I can do it here if I can find someone to help me. I shall talk to my husband. Perhaps he can help. Cheer up and don't wear your misfortune on your face. You never know, things might turn out well for you now that you have changed location. The women talked of their school days and their friends, those who had made it and those who were not so lucky. One particular girl was remembered. Each time Amaka remembered her story, she admired her courage. This girl was 3 years their senior, very energetic and brilliant. In her last year in school, she became pregnant. The man responsible was in a top position in government. His wife had died suddenly in a motor accident, and this girl, Tunde, together with some neighbors, had rallied round for the funeral and all that. This man fancied Tunde, and the result was that she became pregnant. Tunde went to him and told him. He asked her what she intended to do. She said she wanted to have the baby. You will have the baby and I am responsible, the man said. So Tunde carried her baby. She hoped that no one would discover. She was only 18. She showed no sign of change or tiredness or weakness. She did what was expected of her. She took part in games as usual and did her schoolwork very well. But then, how could one hide pregnancy? It began to show. The girls gossiped and the teachers heard. She was summoned to the principal's office. She denied she was pregnant. The school doctor was called in and he confirmed that she was 5 months pregnant. She could deny no more. The man responsible came to the principal and owned up to his responsibility. He would marry her. He was sorry. It was a mistake, he said. But he was talking to the wind. Neither the principal nor the teachers or even the girl sympathized with Tunde and her lover. So she was sent down but allowed to take her exams. The girls were unkind to her. They made fun of her and she was miserable. The school authorities did not stop at that. A very elderly mother was invited to the school to talk to the girls about the merit of virginity. Their virginity was sacred. It was their pride. It was valuable. It was respected by their husbands, and if it was lost, it could never be regained. Adobe was determined to help her friend Amaka. When she got home that afternoon, she told her husband about her. Mike, you remember that girl I used to tell you about in our class who seemed to have everything? Yes, what happened to her? She's in Lagos. I met her in the Kingsway stores today and she told me about her marriage. The one you encouraged your boyfriend to marry. If you want to put it that way. Your boyfriend Obiora, I saved you from that man Adobe. You did, my darling husband. Don't I show how grateful I am to you for saving me from the wicked boyfriend? You did, my love. There is no denying it. But Obiora has changed a good deal. He used to be such a wonderful lover, so considerate, so understanding. There was never a dull moment when you were with him. I was madly in love with him in those days. Then Papa said no to our marriage. Then Papa convinced Mama, and there was nothing I could do. That was when I came in. You were being difficult. You brought up all sorts of problems, but I did not budge. Because the moment I saw you when I returned home on leave, I knew I had found a wife. I did not leave a stone unturned to make you mine. I did everything possible to make you say yes. Your mother and your father were agreeable, all right, but they raised the religious problem. They nearly got me on that, but I told them I was prepared to have a mixed marriage. My mother protested, but I calmed her down. I knew that your grandparents were instrumental in the founding of the Anglican Church in your town, and that the church was regarded as your grandparents' property. It would therefore not be proper for you to abandon the church. I knew what I was doing. If you had followed my religion at that time, the influence of your church in your town would have diminished. Then after doing what you were supposed to do, you refused to go to my church, except on ceremonial occasions. Tell me, was it easy for you to follow our mass? Asked Mike. It wasn't, she said truthfully. There you are. I was brought up to be a Roman Catholic. It wasn't easy for me to change, but I tried. Okay, you win. Then one of their children came in. Mommy, were you arguing with Daddy? I heard your voice. What is the argument about? It was their third child, who was only 3.5. No, my angel, we were not arguing. And they began to laugh. Have you had your milk at Daisy? Adobe asked. Mommy, I don't drink milk anymore. Only Obi drinks milk. Only babies drink milk, Mommy, and I am not a baby. Obi is the baby of the house. I am a big girl and... She ran out of the bedroom when she heard her nanny call her. Adeze is another one, Mike said. The way she grows, at this rate, she will be taller than our first one before she is 10. I think she takes after your father, who is 6'1". But she is a woman. She should not be too tall. You sound like a male chauvinist. What has height got to do with Adeze? A lot, my feminist wife. Who will marry her if she becomes 5'11"? She would need a giant of a man to cope. What's wrong with a woman marrying a man who is shorter than her? I want to know. I don't really know, but it has always been so. And it could never be otherwise. Therefore, we should try and retard our daughter's fast growth. If there was anything I could do to do that, I would do it, said her husband. So she marries someone taller than herself. In their time, I don't think they will put up with what their mothers put up with, Adobe said. She will remain single then, a miserable spinster, left on the shelf. I suppose you would love that. Oh, she could have men friends, have children, and live an independent life, she said. And who is stuffing your head with these unnatural ideas? What have you been reading? Yes, you said you saw your former boyfriend's wife. What did she say to you? Adobe was sensible. She had gone too far. She did not want to go on with the conversation. So it was a welcome relief when her husband asked about Amaka and what she had said to her. Amaka has left Obiora in very painful circumstances. You know, she has been unable to have a child. She didn't want to leave really, but things came to a head and she had to leave. She is in Lagos now and wants to start doing contract work here. So I thought you might help. I saw her in Kingsway store. She said a lot to me. Darling, when one sees people like Amaka, one thanks God for small mercies. Has she registered her company? He asked. I think she has, but I will ask her. She will come to see us on Sunday. Amaka was at her friend's house on Sunday. Adobe's husband was in and welcomed her with an open heart. Amaka was rather sensitive these days, but she liked the way she was welcomed and was pleased. You have a beautiful home. I like your garden, so well kept. That's your friend's handiwork. I am rarely at home. How she finds time to cook, garden, take care of the children, attend church meetings, and work full-time beats my imagination. She is a wonderful wife and a wonderful mother. Amaka was envious of her friend Adobe. Some people were meant to enjoy while others were born to suffer. She saw in her friend's marriage what she had planned for herself. But it was not to be, it was fate. Some people were lucky and some were not so lucky. All those who asked her hand in marriage before Obiora finally married her were not for her. She had come to Lagos to have a clean break with her past. She had come to start life again in the age of 30, when some of her friends who married early were becoming grandmothers. Adobe's husband brought her some soft drink and persuaded her to have a shandy with him. She agreed, and the shandy, beer and Fanta orange did not taste bad at all. Adobe told me you were now in Lagos and wanted to do some contract jobs, he began. Oh yes, Amaka replied. She was a bit taken aback by Adobe's husband's informality, but she rather appreciated it. Mike, please come here for a minute, called Adobe. He rushed to the kitchen to the aid of his wife. Then he quickly came back. I have been telling your friend she works too hard. She won't listen. She is so fastidious. She has maids and servants in that boys' quarter, but she chooses to do everything herself. The one thing I put a stop to was pounding yam. And she talks of male chauvinism and all that. One day she will become ill and not know the cause. So do talk to her. Amaka was impressed. So they were husbands who cared for their wives. Adobe was a lucky woman, blessed with such a husband and children. You will have to register your company in Lagos, Mike said. I have already registered my company, she said. That's good. You are already in business. Have you your registration papers with you? She had them. That's very good, Mike said. Then Adobe came and announced that lunch was served and they moved to the dining room. They were about to start eating when the steward announced that Reverend Father MacLeod was at the door. Adobe went to the door and brought in the august visitor. Father, you always meet us well, as they say. Please sit here. Meet my friend, Mrs. Amaka Iheto, Reverend Father MacLeod, she said to Amaka. They shook hands, and the man of God sat down and ate with them. He did not take his eyes off Amaka. He stared at her and made poor company. Amaka was conscious that she was being closely observed and was embarrassed. Fortunately, Mike was talking away and Adobe was busy playing the good hostess that she was, so she noticed nothing. How is your parish, Father? You are so busy these days. Last Sunday at Mass, I asked about you and was told you went to the East. How was the East? The young lady here, a good friend of my wife's, is from the East, Onitsha in fact. Since the war ended, I have not been there. I am scared. I saw the war, the ravages of war, and when it ended, I was among the first group to return to Lagos. God bless Gowon. Since then, I have refused to go home. My mother is not happy with me, nor my father either. Yet I don't feel like going home at all. I send them pocket money from time to time and remain here. Adobe has nagged and nagged, but has given up. Father MacLeod smiled and said, Never mind, you will go one day to bury your mother and your father. Thank God I have no parents to bury. Have you taken out insurance for that? Mike and Adobe. For what? Adobe asked, placing another dish of soup on the table. It was piping hot and Amaka was enjoying the meal very much. It was cooked that day. Her sister cooked only on Sundays, got the soups frozen, and did not cook again until the next Sunday. Mike heard the father all right, but chose not to answer. Well, I think one should write about the high cost of dying these days. I tell you, I am glad that I don't have any parents to bury. If I had, I would have to break into a bank and rob it of all it has. Our people spend a fortune to send the dead to their ancestors. You know what a friend said the other day? The father continued. He said that he had instructed his wife to bury him in Lagos when he dies. A very jovial person. But the wife did not take it kindly, so she came to me in tears. I told her not to worry, that it would be all right, that her husband did not mean what he said. She insisted that he meant it. That was not the first time he had said it to her. Did it mean that since he had worked as a civil servant, he could not afford a decent burial at home? They laughed. But tell me, father, don't you have uncles? Your father's brothers, your mother's brothers. You know how clannish our people are. When any of them dies, they will pounce on you. Are you from the east? Amaka asked the father. That was her first direct remark to him. Father is somewhere from the east, Mike said, happy to change the subject. Why the name then? Amaka asked. It is a long story, Mike said, and the father grinned.